Well, Nigeria's inflation increased to 24.08% in July from 22.99%. That's the previous month, is the highest in a decade. The figures from the National Bureau of Statistics measure the rate of change in prices of goods and services. It shows a worsening cost of living crisis in Africa's largest economy as President Tinubu's reforms continue to take effect. Now, before we delve into all of that, the breaking story is President Bola Tinubu has officially released his menaces and portfolios to go with those menaces. And again, we can also give you highlights of what these will mean. And well, the 45 minister designates whose nominations were confirmed by the Senate last week have been assigned portfolios. In a list released by the presidency on Wednesday evening, former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike is FCT Minister, Wale Edun, now in charge of Finance, and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Dele Alake, now Minister of Solid Minerals Development. David Umahi, former Governor of Ebonyi State, is Minister of Works, and Festus Keyamo, Minister of Aviation and Aerospace. You know, pretty much a lot of them you can actually catch up on our website, arise.tv. Now, turning Nigeria's present economic problems is on the front burner of every conversation. Still, the question remains, what can the federal government do to turn the tide in favor of Nigeria and Nigerians? Well, to help profess some solutions, I'm joined in the studio by Professor Magnus Kpakol, the former Chief Economic Advisor to Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of Nigeria, and Chairman of the he's also Chairman of the Economic Growth and Development Center with offices in Nigeria and the U.S. Professor Kpakol, good to see you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. So very happy to be on your show.
I'm excited, and it's even a historic day because Nigerians have been asking, where are the ministers? Because this is not the time for to be millipedic, to be so slow in such movement. But again, I'd like you first, before we delve into what's going on with our economy and how we can make it come back to winning ways. What do you expect of a cabinet so released by President Bola Tinubu? Because I know the news has just been out. You're yet to get used to the personalities. But again, looking at the key ministries, by the way, Wale Edun, yes, I think you should be excited about that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think that from what you just said, I just heard from you, so that what you just said now. And I think that the names seem to match the portfolios that have been given to them so far from what I've just seen. Nyesom Wike, leading the FCT, is just being governor. They called him the Mr. Projects. So hopefully he gets to do his thing in Abuja. So I think we'll get to see what happens, but I think that by and large, from what you've just said, it seems like they've gotten started pretty good.
Now let's talk about what's happening in Nigeria, and the economy is one aspect again. But again, let's start by looking at one of the key pains which Nigerians are still trying to understand, and that has to do with the removal of petrol subsidy. We've seen the ripple effect and how much of a pang it's been. What exactly do you think should have been perhaps the first cause before this shake-up?
Yes. Well, thank you. See, I personally have talked on this before in various fora, and I might have approached the subsidy removal differently. Now, I think that we needed to do it. And
we needed to do it.
There's no doubt about it. So the president didn't go wrong in removing the subsidy per se. But I think that we could have done it in a sort of more, in a more gradual fashion, or we should have done it in a more targeted way. I think that we were too broad. We kind of brushed the whole thing in one swipe, and maybe we shouldn't have done that. What I had suggested was that we remove subsidies for people like yourself. And but keep it for the poorer guys And the way you do that is that you provide subsidies for the taxis, for interstate vehicles, for those buses that take people, so that you don't have the kind of impact that we have now seen that we've had on transportation, where I hear that transportation prices have gone up nearly 100%, from when the subsidy was removed. So, and when that happens, that kind of like courses through the economy. We have that pass through that goes all the way to our food and to even our livelihoods in our homes. So I thought that we could have, and I'd actually written something on this and I'd suggested it to people. And I'm thinking we could come back to it now that we're having some issues, where you remove the subsidy, all right, but you leave it for certain sectors of the economy. But we didn't do it that way. We did it the way we have done it. The problem is the reason why you do it the way I'm talking about is it's not so much that you do something, but it's how the people react to it. So we have a situation where people are switched from one way of living to another. Even till now, the truth be told, the fuel prices are still much lower in Nigeria than in many West African countries, and even across the world. We have some of the lowest gasoline prices, but that's not the problem. The problem is that we are yanked from a level that we're very used to this level. So in the general political economy of consideration, you have to, as a policy maker or advisor, you need to look at that. You have to look at not just the changing issue, but the switching issue. The fact that you change the level is different in a way from how you switched from one way of living to another. So all of a sudden, a very large number of people, if we put the whole country together, over 200 million people were switched from some way of living that they understood in terms of their way or cost of living to a very totally different way. And there are too many voices talking at the same time. In some other countries, smaller countries, you may not have this sort of ripple effect as you do have here in Nigeria. So that's been the problem, the fact that people were used to a very low level. It may not have been good. Maybe we were over-consuming. In fact, I would argue that we probably were over-consuming because of the subsidy. Obviously, that's what happens. The theory suggests that when you have subsidy, people over-consume. And so that was the case. But then when we got thrown to a level, then got thrown again to a different level, and trying to get us to be used to market forces that people had not been used to before. Not that we should continue the way we were continuing, but that this is the new environment. And so in such a situation, probably you do it gradually and you let people know where they're going so they get adjusted to the various stages as they go further. So that's basically what I think has been the issue. It's not that you shouldn't have removed the subsidy, but that you probably could have cushioned the removal somehow.
You know the good thing, I'm excited that you're here before me because you're also very good with grassroots, economics. Again, market forces will come back to you so that you can break it down so that the Nigerian out there can better understand this. And you've spoken, copiously, written and presented documents on how to reduce poverty. And then you said not just in Nigeria, but it can be done in Africa.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about poverty reduction because that's one aspect that we've sort of created more poor people lately in the last 8 years. More poor people than wealthy people. So how can we reduce the numbers?
Yeah, well, this is the poverty issue is a very serious issue in Nigeria and for that matter in Africa. I think that poverty is a central issue that we confront in the country because you can't have a society where some people are living in a very miserable way and others, a very small minority, living almost opulently. And I'm very happy that the president has spoken on this. The president himself, he understands, because I've heard him say it, he decries the state of poverty in the country. The problem is that there's not a magic wand that you can wave and remove it. most people probably don't realize that the principal cause of poverty is human capital deficiency. Because by definition, you say that poverty is a situation where people don't have the financial and economic means to provide the basic necessities of life. But the reason they don't have the financial and economic means is because they don't have the human capital to be able to do it. And now, of course, that, in tandem with the infrastructural setup and this sort of the environment in which they operate, for example, if there's insecurity and all those kinds of things. So, but the central thing for each individual and for society is to try to be sure that you grow your human capital base. That's a simple comparison that I often give. If you go back to the 1960s, and you look at where Nigeria was in terms of GDP per capita, and I don't like to use terms like GDP per capita. Basically what it is sort of the productivity. So let's call it, if we look at the productivity of Nigeria, vis-a-vis the productivity of, say, South Korea, which is the same as GDP, because GDP per capita means output divided by the number of people. And so that's how you measure productivity. So our productivity levels were about the same with that of South Korea in the 60s. But today, their productivity is more than 16 times that of Nigeria. So where their GDP per capita is upwards of $33,000, ours is in the neighborhood of 2,000. You may call it 2,000 and change, 2,200 or something like that. The real reason, in fact, the only reason why we have this is because they invested more in their people and caused them to have the skills and ability and the potential, professional and economic potential, to produce the goods and services that the people of the world want. And we have not been able to produce the goods and services that the people of the world want because we don't have the skills to do so. So then you see that truly is human capital development that is central in this. So when people talk about human capital development and I listen to them, they are thinking of just going to school. Okay, well, I got a degree, I have 5 PhDs or whatever. But it is not human capital if it does not produce other goods. In simple economics, we teach that capital is a good that is produced to produce other goods. So it's the same with human capital. Human capital, you produce it whether it be through formal education or through on-the-job training or through experiential training. I just come here like I've learned a lot of things just being in the studio. And also you add to that the wellness of the person, physical and mental wellness of the person. And most importantly, the behavior, the attitudes and behavior of the people. That's extremely important.
I was actually going to bring that in. When you said because people don't have the skills, and I said perhaps I should tell Professor Kpakol to add the behavior. And again, because the behavior is why some people will not want to patronize made in Nigeria goods, made in Nigeria artisans, made in Nigeria products. But again, one of the key concerns will be how to redirect this, because I know full well you weren't talking about South Korea because at that point in time, Nigeria and that country were coming, on stream almost together.
Absolutely.
So what exactly can we do to reverse this and quickly too? Because you're a strong believer of it working.
Yes,
that word is a bigger thing.
That's my biggest passion.
Poverty reduction.
Yes.
So it comes back to it.
Yes.
So what should we Nigerians do before we start talking about the government coming in?
Yeah, my biggest passion is that we erase poverty.
And it's doable.
It's extremely doable because you see other countries are doing it and they have done it. And so basically what it is that we got to focus. There's this thing that I call prosperity economics. And that is we want people not to just look for goals and things to achieve, but to dream. So you want even the poor guys in the villages, everybody can dream. It's not only so-called big men and women that dream. The little guys, they also have their own dreams. It's just that they are invisible. People don't hear them. People don't listen to them. But they are as important as anybody. And so but they can't, poor people cannot get out of poverty easily. Sometimes they can't do it by themselves. In fact, there's a thing, it's a joke that I tell, and I say that if you find yourself in poverty for more than 3 years, you probably can't get out of poverty anymore. So for anybody, so do not allow yourself to be in poverty for more than 3 years. I don't have time here to discuss that, but I can otherwise in some other setting.
I want us to space it.
Okay.
I'll give you the time.
Okay, yes.
Because listen to you talking about 3 years, and I say, wait
Yes.
a minute. The president, you just highlighted that the president is aware, he's pained by it. In the first 4 years, it then means he must get people out of poverty.
Oh yeah, so what I mean is this, as an individual, if you get into poverty, you by yourself cannot get out of it. Somebody has to help you. That's what I mean. So somebody has to help you. The biggest and fastest way to help somebody get out of poverty is to train them. To train them, you see, we say behavior is bad. People say, oh, Nigerians do this, we do that. But sometimes it's because people don't know. Nigerians are not bad people. They just need to be trained. We have to have this training at the local government level, in the villages, in our communities, in the village square, at the city. These ministers need to be trained, to be told, the minute that you become a minister doesn't mean you just suddenly know everything. Or that you become president, you don't know. That's why presidents have advisors. The advisors talk to the president, they share ideas and all of that. Of course, to be president, you know a lot. There's no doubt about it. I always tell people, anybody that you found has become president, that's a very special person. That's a reason why he's got to that level from wherever he has come. He's got to be pretty sharp on where you may criticize him, you may say whatever, but I have tremendous respect for anybody who has been able to rise to that level. And so, but even so, the president still needs to be advised. The ministers need to go through training. In many countries, that's what happened. The mayors, they go through training all the time. You don't just know everything just because you become governor. And I think that that's one area where our governors, our people have to be humble, to accept that they don't necessarily know everything. And you share. Even the guy who is training also needs to be trained by other people too in other areas. So I think that what we need to do is to provide this very serious human capital training in our communities, letting people have their dreams and helping them to show how they can achieve those dreams. And one way also we need to train our people is to support those who are rich. There's this idea that I have, and a lot of people have not really looked at it well. You can't end poverty just by concentrating on the poor. You end poverty also by supporting the rich. So you see in many communities, you see people, maligning rich people. So, oh, you rich people, you're doing this and that to us. But that's not really true. It's the rich guys that serve as anchors to the poorer guys. So we need to, wherever we find a rich man or woman or a big company or whatever, we need to support them.
Especially in countries where you don't have a policy that takes care of the poor people.
Yeah, so because these guys are the ones that provide. Okay, let me just throw a name out there. Look at Dangote, for example. Look at the refinery that he's built now. You know how many people he's hiring? So if he's not in that community, you can imagine what happens to that community. So if it's your village, if it's an oil facility, whatever it is, you got to make sure that you pay attention to that facility to be sure that it is doing well. That's what they do in most other countries. They look at companies that are doing well, look for individuals that are doing well, and you support them. Even Nigerians in the diaspora, often we just leave them alone there. I think that it should be government policy. Well, I know that we have a commission that is looking after them, but we should support them even more to get them to be strong, to have a voice in the land where they live, and so they get stronger and they'll be able to help us back home. And there's this, you have to have some sort of proximity a construction that you create. The reason I call it construction is that you don't have to be right next to a rich person. You could be far away, but you construct a proximity with that person. Small and poor villages, for example, can be far away from a big city. But if you can just provide very good roads, they can get to the big city right away. They can stay in their village and work in the big city. During the time of the Industrial Revolution, a lot of the cities in the Western world, that's what they did. They had the rail lines, and you hop on the train, and you go to the big city, and you work, and you come back home with big money to take care of your community. And so we have to understand these kinds of things. So in that case, the big city It's like the rich person to the poor city, just like a rich person is to a poorer person. So we need to develop these relationships, and we need to teach or educate or facilitate the understanding on the part of richer people that they have a duty. It is their duty to also assist, not by what we call dash, but by creating jobs and looking for skills.
When you say, I hope you don't lose your train of thought.
Yes.
When you say not by what we call dash,
yes,
another word for it now that is now badly used, palliatives.
Yeah. Okay.
So what more can we do if we're saying, well, this is not about palliatives, because we've seen people there's this balance that we're now a government unto ourselves. You go to the villages, they fend for themselves, they provide their own food, they go all out to do things. So what more can we do for those people, especially the artisans, and get them back to cottage industries? That ultimately we'll get back to the big cities and the big industries. It's
like I said, those villages by themselves will never be able to get out of poverty by themselves. They cannot. But they've been that way since time immemorial. Do you see them get out of poverty by themselves? They don't. Usually somebody comes to help, and the person comes to help by citing a factory there and by training the people in certain skills. It may be in tile making, maybe in roof making, maybe in carpentry, furniture making, it may be whatever, but they have to be trained in skills. The way to get out of poverty is to have relationships, maybe direct relations, global or whatever, with people who are a little bit better than you. If you decide to consort only with people that are just like you, then you will stay that way practically forever. So you got to find out, but then sometimes you don't know, and you don't even have the facility for stepping out. And this is where the so-called enlightened people or richer people, it is in their own self-interest, not selfish interest, but in their own self-interest to assist these guys to create a conducive environment. Now, an area, for example, that is of great importance to me, and I think the government should look at, is in the oil industry. Okay, today we're talking about the devaluation and what can we do to strengthen the Naira and all of that. What we can do is to produce more oil. I mean, that's the easiest, the fastest thing to do in Nigeria today to stabilize the value of the Naira is to produce more crude oil. And an organization like NUPREC, the Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, I think that they're doing a fantastic job. Since they ended the old DPR, this organization, I see what they're doing with communities. Asking producers, IOCs, and independent petroleum producing organizations to support their communities, to teach and educate the communities from where you get crude oil. Because, you see, the reason people act up in, say, oil producing communities or any community is because they have been severed from their endowments. The reason people are poor also, outside of this human capital thing, is because they are not allowed to leverage their God-given endowments. This happens in the Niger Delta, it happens, say, in Zamfara. So they have gold, they have this in Zamfara, they have all these things, but they are not allowed to just go there and mine these things. Just like you have oil in the Niger Delta, and they are not allowed to do it. Therefore, since you have Nigerian laws, stipulated the way they're stipulated, then you got to be able to get the resources coming back, like what NUPREC is advising for these communities, for the oil-producing organizations, to have trust funds in these communities. But you must help and teach them how to run the trust funds. This is what NUPREC is doing. I think it's wonderful what they're doing in that organization there. So helping to do so that way they don't break the pipelines. The biggest problem that NUPREC has is to get the oil to the terminals so that the oil can go out. So
let's come back and see if we can wrap up talking about how we can unlock some of these things. Because you spoke about, access to some of these resources. And you also spoke about the bad guys, because I recall then, it was then in the news when Tony Elumelu had spoken about how much they've not been able to get from their from the crude because people were tampering to the crude.
Yeah, but they will tamper with the crude because you're not engaging them properly.
No. Yeah. So it comes back to how we can unlock all of these. So how do we unlock this that will benefit the grassroots and also benefit everyone in the big cities?
Yes.
It comes back to the government and the National Assembly.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So we have to, at the federal, state, and local levels, you can't, I don't like, the one problem the federal government has, and always has had, for as long as I can remember, is that the federal government thinks that they can do it by themselves, but they can't. They don't have the capacity to do it. So that they have to involve the states and the local governments quite a bit. And I think that, and they also have to involve universities, academia, and the private sector. There's this gap thing that I talk about, government, academia, and the private sector. So, but the federal government is the leader here. So the federal government takes the initiative, brings these people together, and then we look for ways to do research into why we have this pipelines being vandalized. You don't just have surface reasons. And we go there, we involve these guys as stakeholders. When you get the whole community involved as stakeholders and they're profiting or benefiting from it, they will not allow some other guys to come and break pipelines because they see that it supports their livelihood. They see their businesses thriving, their hotels, their whatever, and they're getting jobs in the place. Their children are getting jobs. So then they become serious stakeholders. It's intelligence that helps you to stop the sort of vandalization of pipelines that we see. It's not so much brute force, but we have intelligence. There are some boys here that are trying to do such and such. That intelligence is going to come from the community because the community people see themselves as stakeholders in the business. And so we have to understand these kinds of things and work them. Now, I mean, I tell you, the whole thing is we have the capacity to do it here in Nigeria. But I think that we don't get together enough and facilitate how we work together with timelines and targets and the things that we need to achieve. And I think that from what I see with this president, I think that they have the ideas, and because from what they've started, but sometimes they need to get them to be more coherent, because then sometimes the consequences may not have been well thought through, and things have happened, but the general direction is good, and so I think that they should work more with the state and local governments, very without politics, without too much politics involved. When people understand that this is good for us, they will be stakeholders. Everybody works in his self-interest, not selfish interest. Selfish interest is a different thing and bad. But the self-interest, if I help you, I believe you also will help me. Then it's in my self-interest to help you.
Well, certainly, I think this is a conversation that we should be having from time to time. Because listening to you, I also see that we have to re-educate the people, so that because you still have some bad guys in such communities, even when the community benefits you. We've seen projects being done by companies. But anyway, Professor Magnus Kpakol, many thanks for your time, and we should do this again.
Thank you very much.